There is a tiredness that has nothing to do with lack of sleep. It's a weariness in the bones, a quiet humming of exhaustion in the nervous system that comes from years of being responsible for someone else's weather. And then, one day, you stop. You don't announce it. There is no grand speech, no final, dramatic text message. The performance simply ends. The phone goes quiet, not because you are waiting for it to ring, but because you have finally put it down. This is the final silence, and it feels nothing like you thought it would. It is not peaceful, not at first. It is loud. It is a roaring quiet, filled with the ghosts of 1,000 unsent replies, 1,000,000 justifications you no longer have to make. Your thumb might still hover over their name in your contacts, a muscle memory of appeasement. Your body is still braced for the incoming storm, the sudden mood swing, the manufactured crisis that only your specific brand of calm could solve. But the storm doesn't come. Or rather, it does, but you are no longer standing in the middle of it, holding a broken umbrella. You are watching it from a window, in a room you have just discovered is your own. And this is where the first wave of a strange, cold guilt begins to wash over you. They might call your silence cruel. They might call it cold, heartless, a punishment. And a part of you, the part that was trained for years to be the good one, the understanding one, believes them. Is this cruelty? Is this the act of a bad person? This question is the invisible chain that has kept you in the dynamic for so long. The fear of being perceived as anything other than kind, patient, and loving has been the fuel for your own self-abandonment. But this silence, this final, profound withdrawal, is not a tactic. It is not a move in a game. It is a biological imperative. It is the soul's last-ditch effort to save itself. It is the moment an empath stops being a function and begins, terrifyingly, to become a person. And that changes everything. The initial phase of this silence is a detoxification. Your system, so accustomed to the constant drip of their chaos and your corresponding cortisol response, goes into withdrawal. You feel anxious, agitated, and overwhelmingly guilty. You replay every conversation, every time you could have been better, softer, or more patient. You are auditing your own kindness, trying to find where you went wrong, when the truth is, where you went wrong was in offering your kindness as a sacrifice instead of a gift. A gift can be rejected. A gift is given freely, without the expectation of changing the recipient. A sacrifice, however, is given with the unconscious hope that it will appease a god, change a fate, or earn a specific outcome. For years, you weren't just being kind. You were making sacrifices of your time, your energy, your boundaries, and your own emotional stability on the altar of their validation. You were hoping your goodness would be the medicine that finally healed them, but it never worked. It only made them more dependent on your function as a healer, and you more addicted to the role of the rescuer. The dynamic became a perfectly interlocking system of need and supply. They needed a place to offload their internal chaos, their unprocessed shame, their inability to self-regulate. You, driven by a deep, often childhood-born belief that your worth is tied to your ability to fix and soothe, needed to be needed. It wasn't love, not in its purest form. It was a trauma bond, a dance of two shadows. When you go silent, you are not just withdrawing your words, you are cutting off the supply. And this is why the reaction from the other side can be so disproportionate, so dramatic. When you were present, explaining, trying, giving, you were often met with indifference, criticism, or dismissal. Your presence was wallpaper. It was taken for granted. But your absence? Your absence creates a vacuum. Suddenly, the mirror in which they saw a distorted, more palatable version of themselves is gone. The container for their rage and anxiety has been removed. They are left alone in a room with their own feelings, a place they have expertly avoided for years, often by making you the center of their emotional universe. Their panic is not about losing you, the person. It is about losing their primary coping mechanism. This is where we must turn to the work of Carl Jung to understand the profound psychological shift that is occurring. Jung spoke of the persona. The persona is the social mask we wear, the version of ourselves we present to the world. For the empath caught in this dynamic, the persona is that of the infinite well, the good person, the healer, the understanding soul. This isn't a fake mask. It is often built from genuine traits of compassion and empathy. but it becomes a rigid, one-sided identity. You are the one who understands, so you are not allowed to be misunderstood. You are the one who gives, so you are not allowed to have needs. You are the one who is calm, so you are not allowed to be angry. Your entire identity, your sense of self-worth, becomes fused with this persona. The approval you get for being so good and so patient becomes the air you breathe. But Jung warned that over-identification with the persona comes at a terrible cost. The parts of you that don't fit the mask, your anger, your exhaustion, your needs, your desire to be cared for, are relegated to what he called the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious repository of everything we deny about ourselves. Your final silence is the eruption of the shadow. It is every no you swallowed. It is every tear you cried in private after a phone call where you had to be the strong one. It is the accumulated rage of 1,000 paper cuts to your soul. But the shadow is not evil. It is not something to be feared. Its purpose is balance. It rises up not to destroy you, but to make you whole. It is the part of your psyche that is screaming, "No more, we are dying here." The intense guilt you feel is the persona's death rattle. Your ego, which is identified with being the good one for so long, panics. It tells you, if I am not the helper, who am I? If I am not kind, I am cruel. If they are in pain because of my silence, then I am a bad person. This is the core illusion. Your silence is not an act of aggression. It is the cessation of self-harm. You have simply stopped setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. They are not cold because you are cruel. They are cold because they never learned how to build their own fire. Let's look deeper at the mechanism of projection. In a Jungian sense, projection is when we unconsciously attribute our own unacknowledged qualities to another person. The empath in this dynamic is engaged in a massive projection of goodness. You see the wounded child within the other person, the flicker of potential, the person they could be if only they would heal. You project your own capacity for self-reflection, accountability, and growth onto them, believing that if you just love them hard enough, they will access these qualities within themselves. You are essentially falling in love with a projection, a potential future that exists only in your mind. You are interacting not with the person as they are, but with the person you need them to be. Meanwhile, they are projecting onto you as well. They project the role of the all-giving, all-forgiving mother figure, the emotional regulator, the one who will absorb their darkness without complaint. They see you not as a person with limits and needs, but as a resource. When your final silence descends, both of these projections shatter simultaneously. You are forced to see that the person you were trying to save does not want to be saved, or is incapable of doing the work. You are forced to withdraw your projection of their potential, and they are forced to see that you are not an infinite resource. You are a human being who has reached a limit. The rage they may direct at you is the rage of an addict whose drug has been taken away. It is the fury of seeing their flattering projection of you crumble, replaced by a real person with boundaries. They will call you selfish because, for the first time, you are prioritizing the needs of yourself. Think of it like a closed door. For years, your door was not only unlocked but wide open. You may have even taken the door off its hinges to make access to you as easy as possible. People could walk in and out, tracking mud on the floor, leaving their emotional baggage in the corner, taking warmth from your fire, and never once thinking to bring a log for it themselves. You might have complained about it, you might have sighed and cleaned up after them, but the door remained open. Your final silence is the act of putting the door back on its hinges, closing it, and turning the key in the lock. It is a quiet, firm, decisive action. The shock is not that the door is closed. The shock is that there is a door at all. The other person, so used to unfettered access, will rattle the handle. They will knock, then bang. They might shout through the keyhole, telling you how cruel you are to lock them out in the cold. They will list all the times they needed you, and you were there, framing it as a debt you now owe. They will try to pick the lock with old manipulations, with promises of change, with sudden, convenient epiphanies about their behavior. And the guilt you feel is the echo of your old role, whispering from inside the room. Just open the door, it's easier. You're the good one, remember? Good people don't let others stand out in the cold. This is the most dangerous moment. This is the test. Because opening that door, even a crack, doesn't just let them back in. It tells your own soul that its safety is negotiable. It teaches your psyche that even when it screams no, the answer can still be maybe. The work now is not to worry about the person on the other side of the door. The work is to get comfortable in the room you have just secured. It might feel strange at first. The silence might be deafening. You've spent so long listening for their footsteps, their needs, their moods, that you have forgotten the sound of your own breathing. You have forgotten what you like, what you want, what brings you peace when you are not actively managing a crisis. This room is yourself, the core of your being that has been neglected. It's time to furnish it. It's time to light your own fire, not to warm someone else, but to warm yourself. It's time to look out the window not with dread, but with curiosity. The world exists beyond that one person's drama. The change that this silence precipitates is, first and foremost, internal. You begin to notice small things, a lightness in your chest, the absence of that constant low-level anxiety that felt like your baseline. You might sleep through the night without waking up to check your phone. You might find yourself laughing at something simple, and the laugh feels foreign, like an old language you were just starting to remember. This is your nervous system beginning to regulate itself, coming out of a years-long state of fight or flight. But there is an external change too. The dynamic, which felt like an unbreakable law of physics, begins to dissolve. Without your energy to sustain it, the pattern starves. The other person is forced into a choice: either find another source of supply or finally face the emptiness they have been running from. Whatever they choose is no longer your responsibility. This is a crucial distinction. Their healing, their journey, their choices are their own. You were never their savior, and it was a form of hubris, a shadow side of the empath, to believe you could be. The rescuer complex is a powerful one, as it gives the ego a sense of purpose and superiority. Letting go of it means accepting a humbler, but more authentic place in the world. There is another uncomfortable truth that the empath must face in this process. Your kindness was not entirely selfless. It was, in part, a sophisticated strategy for control. By being the good one, the fixer, you maintained a sense of control in a chaotic relationship. As long as you were managing their emotions, you could predict, to some extent, their behavior. You could stave off abandonment by making yourself indispensable. It was a way to manage your own deep-seated fear, the fear of not being needed, the fear of being disposable, the fear of being alone with your own unaddressed wounds. When you go silent, you relinquish that control. You are stepping into the terrifying void of the unknown. You are accepting that you cannot manage another person's journey. You are also, finally, being forced to face your own. All the energy you poured into them now has nowhere to go but back into yourself. What do you do with it? What wounds have you been ignoring while you were so busy tending to theirs? What parts of your own life have you neglected? This is the beginning of the path of individuation, the journey from being a part of an enmeshed system to becoming a whole, integrated individual. If this reflection is naming something you have never been able to say out loud, consider taking a moment to write a single, private sentence for yourself, a sentence of recognition for the part of you that knew it was time to fall silent. The process of integrating this change is slow. There will be days when the guilt comes back with a vengeance. You might see something that reminds you of them and feel a pang of the old, familiar ache. A part of you will miss the intensity, because even toxic intensity can feel more alive than a quiet, uncertain peace. Your ego will miss its role as the hero, the martyr, the one who understood. This is normal. You are grieving. You are not just grieving the loss of a person, but the loss of an entire identity, a role that defined you for years. You are grieving the future you imagined with them, the one where they finally changed and recognized all you had done. This is the death of a fantasy, and it requires a funeral. Allow yourself to feel that grief without acting on it. Let the waves of guilt and sadness wash over you without picking up the phone, without unblocking them, without reopening the door. Each time you withstand the urge, you are strengthening a new neural pathway. You are teaching your body, on a cellular level, that you can survive discomfort. You can self-soothe. You are your own safe harbor. The so-called coldness that others may accuse you of is, in reality, the emergence of a healthy boundary. It is not a wall of ice built from hatred. It is a sacred boundary of self-respect, built brick by brick with every no you finally allowed yourself to say. It feels cold to those who were used to warming themselves at your bonfire, but for you, it is the beginning of a temperate, sustainable inner climate. You are no longer living in the extreme weather of their emotional world. Over time, the silence changes its quality. It is no longer a roaring, empty void. It becomes a gentle hum. It becomes peace. It becomes the space where you can finally hear your own thoughts, your own intuition. You start to trust that quiet inner voice you had to mute for so long, because it was telling you the truth you weren't ready to hear. It was the voice that said, "This isn't love. This is hurting you. You need to leave." That voice is your connection to the self, the true, organizing center of the psyche. Your final silence was you finally obeying its wisdom. What happens next is not about them. The question is not whether they will change or regret it or come back. The question is, if they did come back, who would they find? They would not find the open door and the exhausted host, desperate to please. They would find a closed door, and the person who answers it would be someone who knows their own worth, someone who is no longer afraid of their own solitude, someone whose kindness is now a conscious choice, not a compulsive need. This new version of you would be able to love without needing to fix, to care without needing to carry, and to walk away without feeling the need to set the whole world on fire with explanations. You would understand that some people can only be loved from a distance. The final silence of the empath is not an ending. It is a profound and radical beginning. It is the moment you stop auditioning for the role of the good person in someone else's chaotic drama and start claiming the lead role in your own life. It is the point where you realize that the most important person you were ever meant to save was yourself. The silence is the sound of you finally coming home. And in that home, behind that now secure door, you discover that the peace you were trying so desperately to give to someone else was waiting for you all along. My kindness no longer requires my self-betrayal. This is not a destination, but a new compass bearing. It is the core principle that guides you as you begin to navigate the vast, uncharted territory of your own inner world. And this is where the body begins to speak its truth. For years, your body has been a silent soldier, holding the tension in its jaw, its shoulders, its gut. It has been a library of every slight, every moment of walking on eggshells, every time you swallowed your truth to keep a fragile peace. Now, in the quiet, the library doors swing open. You might notice your shoulders, which were perpetually braced for impact, begin to drop. You might become aware of a fist in your stomach you didn't even know you were making, slowly unclenching. You might wake up one morning and realize your jaw isn't sore from grinding your teeth all night. These are not small victories. They are seismic shifts. This is the body's memory, the somatic layer of your experience, finally being given permission to exhale a breath it has held for a decade. The exhaustion you felt was never just mental. It was the physical weight of carrying two people's emotional realities. Your nervous system, a finely tuned instrument, was forced to process the discordant noise of their inner chaos alongside your own. Now, it is recalibrating. This recalibration can feel strange, even uncomfortable. Peace can feel boring. Calm can feel like emptiness. Your body, so used to the adrenaline of the next crisis, might interpret the absence of threat as a sign that something is wrong. This is the phantom limb of the trauma bond. You might find yourself searching for a problem to solve, a fire to put out, simply because the feeling of being on high alert has become your definition of normal. The work here is to sit with this phantom ache and gently re-educate your body, to teach it, through consistent action, that safety is not a temporary ceasefire, it is your new home ground. This is done through simple, grounding acts. Feeling your feet on the floor, noticing the taste of your morning coffee without the accompanying dread of checking your phone, taking a walk and focusing only on the feeling of the wind on your skin. These are acts of profound rebellion. You are reclaiming your senses from the relational battlefield and bringing them home to yourself. This is also where the true work of shadow integration begins. The shadow's eruption, the final silence, was an act of survival. But leaving the shadow in an unintegrated state can be dangerous. It can leave you bitter, cynical, and permanently walled off, swapping one rigid persona, the good person, for another, the wounded victim, or the untouchable cynic. True integration is not about letting the shadow take over. It is about turning to face it, inviting it in from the cold, and listening to what it has to say. The anger that erupted is not a monster to be caged. It is pure life force. It is the part of you that loves yourself enough to say no. Your task is to learn how to wield this anger not as a destructive wildfire, but as a controlled, protective flame that warms your own hearth and defines your boundaries. When you feel a flash of that old anger now, you don't have to swallow it or lash out with it. You can learn to ask it, what boundary is being crossed here? What need is being ignored? The shadow, when listened to, becomes your greatest ally, your most astute protector. This is the journey of the wounded healer archetype. Your deep empathy, your capacity to feel so much, is your gift. But for years you were operating from the wound itself. You were trying to heal others to avoid the pain of your own unhealed parts. You were giving transfusions from an empty vein. By going silent and turning inward, you finally place the stethoscope on your own heart. You begin to tend to the original wound, the childhood experience perhaps, that taught you that your worth was conditional upon your usefulness to others. As you heal this primary wound, your gift of empathy is transformed. It is no longer a porous, indiscriminate sponge, soaking up all the world's pain. It becomes a discerning, powerful tool. You can still feel deeply for others, but you do so from a place of fullness, not deficit. You can offer a cup of water from your well without letting them drain the well dry. As this integration deepens, you will notice more concrete inner signs. Your internal monologue begins to change. The voice of the inner critic, which sounded suspiciously like your former partner, starts to fade. It is replaced by a quieter, more curious voice, the voice of the self. Instead of, "How could I have been so stupid?" you start to ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of, "I should have done more," you begin to affirm, "I did the best I could with the awareness I had." Your perception of the world sharpens. You might be watching a film or reading a book and see a dynamic between two characters that would have once seemed romantic or intense, but now you see it for what it is: the subtle manipulation, the codependency, the emotional vampirism. This is not you becoming cynical. This is you becoming wise. Your empathy is no longer blind. It has been paired with discernment. Then comes the late practical test. This test does not arrive when you are raw and vulnerable, in the early days of the silence. It comes months, maybe even a year or more later. It arrives on a Tuesday afternoon when you are feeling good, stable, and almost forgetful of the old chaos. It will be a text message out of the blue. "Thinking of you, hope you're well." Or an accidental encounter in a grocery store. Or a message from a mutual acquaintance saying, "They've really changed, you know. They talk about you all the time." This is the final boss level. It is not designed to trigger your fear or your grief. It is designed to trigger your old persona, the good person, the kind one. A simple reply seems harmless, right? Rude to ignore it, cold, unkind. But the integrated empath, the one who has befriended their shadow and healed their core wound, experiences this moment differently. There is no jolt of panic. There is no surge of rage. There is no pull of longing. Instead, there is a quiet, profound stillness. You look at the message on your phone or the person in the aisle, and you see them clearly for the first time, stripped of all your projections. You see not a monster to be feared, nor a lost soul to be saved. You see simply a person from your past, a chapter that is over. Your heart does not race, your body does not brace, your thumb does not hover. Your first thought is not, "What do they want?" or "What should I say?" Your first thought is, "What do I need to preserve my peace?" And the answer is clear. It is not an angry no or a dramatic blocking. It is a quiet, internal no. A simple, non-emotional decision to not re-engage. You might delete the message without replying. You might offer a polite, distant nod in the store and keep walking. You do not need to prove you are a good person. You do not need them to see that you have healed. You do not need an apology. You do not need closure from them because you have already given it to yourself. Passing this test is not a moment of triumphant victory. It is a moment of deep, quiet peace. It is the final, irrefutable evidence that you are free. The silence, you realize, was never about punishing them. It was about creating a sacred cocoon for your own metamorphosis. And what emerges is not a person who is hard and unfeeling. What emerges is a person who is whole. Your heart, once broken open by the trauma, has not sealed over with scar tissue. It has been filled with your own presence. From this place, your kindness becomes an authentic and powerful force. It is no longer a desperate plea for love or a strategy for safety. It is a conscious choice, offered freely and without attachment to the outcome. You learn to connect with others from a place of sovereignty. The final silence was not the end of your voice. It was the clearing of your throat. It was the necessary pause before you could begin to speak, for the first time, in your own true tone. And this new voice, born of silence and shadow and self-reclamation, is the one you were always meant to have. It is quiet, it is confident, and it is, finally, completely your own.